Hello everyone, in this video we're going to discuss an interesting quadratic equation work problem. So, a tutor has 6 students per day when he charges $35 per hour for tutoring. For every increase of $5 in hourly rate, the daily number of his students decreases by 2. What are the maximum daily earnings possible? Okay, so what I would do here, I would understand how we're going to build a quadratic equation by first looking at a linear equation. Okay, so the quadratic equation will be derived from the linear equation. Now, what is a quadratic equation? What does it consist of? If we let E be the earnings and H hourly rate and S the number of students per day, right? Because this is daily students. Then we'll use the formula earnings is equal to the number of the hourly rate times the number of students. Okay. Now we assume that each student tutors for 1 hour. Okay. So let's see. So this is going to be the formula that we're going to use. But before we estimate the earnings, we have to estimate the number of students as a function of the hourly rate, right? Because the number of students, as it says here, for every increase of $5 in hourly rate, the number of students decreases by 2. So S depends on the R, right? So we're going to write an equation for S. Well, actually, there are 2 ways of figuring out the linear equation. So first, let's do, I'm going to separate it here in a column. So let S be as a function of H. So we will treat the six students, the initial number of students, as the initial value. Okay, so we'll treat that. And then we'll assume that he will raise the hourly rate. So we're going to subtract, okay? And let's see what we're going to have. So H is the hourly rate, right? So if he increases the hourly rate, the H will be greater than 35, right? Because he currently charges $35 per tutoring. So we'll subtract 35. Now H minus 35 will be positive, right? Because H will exceed 35. So as a result, it will be the difference between the higher hourly rate and the current hourly rate. Now we will have to divide this by 5, okay? Because it says that for every increase of $5 in hourly rate. And the reason why we'll divide by 5 is because the difference between the higher hourly rate and the current hourly rate of 35 divided by 5 will give you what? Will give you the number of these $5 increases, right? Because suppose that H is equal to 40. The new hourly rate is 40. Then you will have a difference of 5, and dividing by the 5 will give you the number of these increases of 5, which is 1, right? Because if he increases by $5 only once, the hourly rate will be 40. So it makes sense to divide by 5 to get the number of these $5 increases in the hourly rate. Okay? So treat this as the number of $5 increases of the hourly rate, what we have in the parentheses. Now, if we find the number of these increases, we'll have to multiply this number of increases by 2, right? Because we'll have to subtract the number of students as a result, right? Because for every $5 increase, we have to multiply it by 2 because it says that the number of his students decreases by 2. So if we have, let's say, 4 $5 increases in the hourly rate, then this 4 will be multiplied by 2 to find the number of students that are missing now, right? Because more students will leave as he increases the price. Okay, so this equation makes sense in that way. Now let's let's simplify it. So we'll have 6 And keep in mind that if you plug in 35 for the h, you will get 0. So you're not going to subtract anything, and it makes sense that 6 students will remain. So if he charges $35, this whole thing turns to 0, and s will equal to 6. So it already shows that this equation is true. Okay? So let's simplify. 2/5 h, right? We're just taking this 5 outside and distributing this fraction -2/5 to the h and the -35. So what's first, let's divide this -35 by 5. We get -7. -7 times -2 is +14. Okay, so as a result, the equation is 20 minus 25h. Okay, now what is the second method of achieving this? Well, the second method is to simply treat a linear equation, okay, taking the point and the slope available. So let's see, what is going to be the point? So the independent variable will be the hourly rate, and the dependent will be the number of students. And that's going to be, let's see, the hourly rate is 35, and the number of students is 6. And now the slope, we will have m as the slope is equal to, so degrees by 2, so it's -2 per $5 increase, so +5, right? -2/5. So as a result, the equation is s is equal to -2.5 h minus 35, right? That's the slope-intercept form I'm using, plus the initial value of s. So as a result, you're getting the same result here, okay? 20 minus 2.5h. And now what happens? What happens after that? Now we're ready to estimate the e, right? Because if we know s as a function of h, right? We found the s, and then we multiply it by the h, we'll get the earnings, but this time it will be a quadratic equation, right? So we're going to have e is equal to h times s, which will be in terms of h. So it's going to be 20 minus 2/5 h. And that is equal to 20h minus 2/5 h squared. So now we have to estimate the maximum earnings. Now the maximum earnings will be found by understanding what the vertex of the quadratic function is, right? Because this is a quadratic equation, it will be a parabola, basically, okay? So now it comes in this form. ax squared plus bx plus c. And in this case, c is equal to 0. There's no constant there. So now, as you know, the maximum will be achieved when we use the formula minus b divided by 2a. And what is the b? The b is the coefficient of x. Okay, so b is going to be 20 in this case, right? The coefficient of h, right? We're just thinking of h here. And then a will be the coefficient of x squared, right? And h squared in this case. And that's going to be -2.5. So as a result, the maximum will be achieved when we have, so let's see, max e at, let's substitute in, -b is going to be -20 over 2 times a, so 2 times -2.5. And now notice that the negatives will go away because they're both negatives in the numerator and denominator. So 20 will multiply the 5, and it will be 40 over 2 times 2 is 4. So it's going to be wait, sorry, not 20 times 5 is 100. Sorry about that. I don't know why I thought of 2 instead of 5. I don't know why. Yeah, it should be 100, right, divided by 4, right, because 5 goes to 20 and then 2 goes to 2 is 4. So that's 25. So the maximum earnings amount will be when H is equal to 25. Then when the hourly rate is $25 per hour, okay, that will be determine the maximum earnings amount. So now let's calculate what it's going to be. So E as a function of H will be E as a function, we're going to plug it in, E of 25, right, because we found the H value, and we're going to use this formula to plug in the 25, okay? So it's going to be 20 times 25 minus 2/5, 25 squared. And that's going to be, let's see, 20 times 25 is going to be 500, I believe. And then, well, let's have 25 times 25 here. 25 divided by 5 is 5. So 5 times 25 is 125, right? So I'm just splitting up this 25 in my head, dividing one of the 25ths by 5. I get 5, and then it multiplies the other 25 that was part of the square, right? So it's 125 times negative 2 is negative 250. So that result gives us 250. So $250 will be the maximum earnings amount per day, okay? When he has, so he has to have $25 dollars per hour as his rate for tutoring per hour in order to get the maximum earnings amount, which is $250, okay? So now what is the third way of doing this? You might ask me, is that the only way? I mean, this looks tedious. Well, it's actually, it may be more straightforward to some people, but let's see what we're going to do. So we're going to use this formula. E is equal to H times S. So now notice that we can express this E as simply 35 times 6, right? The hourly rate times the number of students. Now we can also think of it as this: 35 plus 0, 6 plus 0. Well, rather, I'm not going to say I'm just going to say a minus 0 here. And why? Because the number of students decreases, right, as he increases the hourly rate. So I'm just going to say 6 minus 0 so that it makes sense. 6 minus 0. Notice that if he increases his hourly rate by 5, if he increases his hourly rate by 5, the earnings will be 6 minus the number of students will be 6 minus 2, right? Because it decreases by 2 whenever he increases. So that will be the new amount, the earnings amount. So what does that tell you? That tells you that for X $5 increases, he will have the number of students decrease by 2x, right? So we can use the x as the variable, as the scalar multiple, basically, of 5. Or yeah, we can use it as a scalar what is it? I can't think of a word. Just a variable. Just think of it as a variable that determines how many $5 increases in hourly rate will be, and then that will also determine how many 2 student decreases will result. Okay, so let's have it as E is equal to 35 plus 5x, right? 5x will tell you the number of $5 increases in the hourly rate multiplied by 6 minus 2x. Okay? Because 2x, the number of 2 student decreases tells you that, right? Minus 2x. So this is the equation that we're looking for. And now we can simply distribute that. What's 35 times 6? 35 times 6 is, that's going to be 30 times 6 is 180 plus 6 times 5 plus 30. So that's 180 plus 30 is 210. I just split this multiplication by having this 35 as 30 plus 5 in my head and then distributing the 6. Okay, so 210 minus 70x plus 30x, I'm just using the FOIL method technique, minus 10x squared. Okay? And that turns into, well, let's see, negative 10x squared. I'm just going to write it in the standard quadratic formula order. What's minus 70 plus 30? That's minus 40x. And then plus 210. Okay? So now we're treating this the same way. We're going to take the maximum to find the maximum amount, the earnings amount. We're going to use the minus b over 2a, right? So it's going to be max e minus b over 2a. So let's substitute. The b is negative 40 minus negative 40, right? Because there is already minus 40, and we negate that as well because it's negative b over 2 times a, and a is negative 10, right? So it's going to be 2 times negative 10. So as a result, it's going to be 40 divided by twice what is it, twice of 10, so that's negative 20 is equal to negative 2. Okay, now keep in mind that this is the x value, right? This is the x value. You might say, oh, why is it negative? The hourly rate should be positive, right? Why is this minus 2? No. You should be aware that this is the x value, and the x value can be anything. It's not the hourly rate, nor it's the number of students. Okay, it's just the x that we've created. When I talked about it before, this is the variable that just tells us how many $5 increases in the hourly rate will happen, or how many 2-student decreases will happen as a result, right? X is not the number of students, X is not the hourly rate, okay? That's why it's negative 2, and don't worry about it, it's still correct. So you plug this X value of negative 2 into the earnings formula, and then you'll find your the maximum earnings amount. So E is a function of X here, right? So now E as a function of negative 2 will be negative 10. We're going to use this equation, right? So it's going to be negative 10. What's negative 2 squared? That's 4, right? So negative 10 times 4 is negative 40. Okay, and then minus 40 times negative 2, that's going to give you plus 80. And then plus 210. So that will give you 80 minus 40 is 40 plus 210. Bingo. Look, guys, 250. Isn't that the same answer we got here? So that's just another way for you to do this problem by directly hitting the original equation, which was the equation for E, the earnings amount, as a function of the hourly rate and the number of students per day. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope you understand the quadratic equations a little better. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.